Mr. Chairman, His Excellency President Buhari and wife, former presidents of Nigeria, Their Excellency, the visiting presidents, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, dear friends. Have I left anybody out? Thanks for that introduction. I prefer to refer to myself simply as a teacher by training and a diplomat by accident. A very prolonged accident, and therefore, because I'm speaking last, we had an informal division of labor where Asiwaju will speak, of course, as a politician that he is. The other reviewer, John Campbell, will speak as an American and a diplomat and somebody who served in our country. Of course, Dr. Onu as a politician and President Minister, and I'll simply provide the perspective of my experience as a minister in President Buhari's first government, as a professor of political science, and finally as a diplomat. Each of these should take about 20 minutes, but trust me, I'll be quite brief. But first things first, this is a concise and readable and excellent book of about 263 pages of text, and a concluding chapter, which I really recommend because those of you who are pressed for time, that chapter actually summarizes the organization and substance of the manuscript. The author, Professor John Payden, is a friend and an academic colleague for several decades, and is particularly suited to write this book, not only because he has known the subject for over 3 decades, but he also had access to unpublished manuscript of an ongoing autobiography of Muhammadu Buhari. Furthermore, Professor Payden is a leading authority on political leadership in Nigeria, to the north, and has written extensively on the nexus between religion and political culture in Kano, and produced, in more sense than one, a huge biography on Ahmadu Bello, Sardauna Sokoto, Values and Leadership in Nigeria. The book is an authorized but not an official biography of Muhammadu Buhari, and its focus is on leadership issues and some of the ways in which leadership responds to existential challenges facing a nation or people. According to the author, and I quote, "Leadership is clearly the key to the success of the Nigerian project, which he, Payden, described as a quest for a prosperous and unified Nigeria and the achievement of national unity," end of quote. Arguing further that without such unity, economic prosperity and human security will always be in jeopardy, end of quote. There are 2 principal questions addressed by John Payden in this biography, and they are closely related. First, who is President Buhari? And second, how is he addressing the many challenges that Nigeria faces? Gerard Danjuma provides 3 early clues in answering this question. First, while he was in secondary school, President Buhari has won a merit-based competition for a summer scholarship in Britain, which was organized by the famous shipping line, Elder Dempster. While in Britain, he was exposed to and greatly appreciated how advanced countries are organized and governed in what I call a rules-based system. Second, that in the military, especially during the Civil War, he acquired a reputation as an officer of great personal discipline, competence, patriotism, valor, who placed huge premium on the welfare of his troops. Third, he was persistent. Some will call it stubborn. I think I've heard the president himself refer to himself as stubborn. But I will not quote the context. In the pursuit of his belief in achieving his set goals, as demonstrated in 4 attempts he made to be president through competitive democratic elections. This single-minded determination to succeed in set goals is also observable in the present war against Boko Haram and in the fight against corruption. Among his first, he was the first military officer to command 3 out of the then 4 divisions of the Nigerian Army, and is the second military head of state to be elected president. The first one is right here with us, the special guest of honor. I will not talk about his antecedents because that has been covered in the book and also by the reviewers. Let me go to some substance. First, there are some lingering questions about President Buhari which should now be put to rest finally. How did Buhari treat members of his cabinet? Is he the autocrat which some ascribe to him, or does he delegate and value collegial relationship? Even though he was head of military government in 1984-85, he conducted cabinet meetings in a democratic manner. I can testify to that because I know a number of times he will introduce memos to the Federal Executive Council, and some of us, young Turks, will oppose that memo, and he will withdraw them because he failed to get consensus. Now, we are just bloody civilians in a military administration, and yet he would defer to the collective wisdom of the cabinet. The charge that is an Islamic bigot is also impossible to sustain. His experience in the military as military governor, then federal cabinet minister, head of government, preparing to respect followers of other faiths and to recognize strength in the diversity of ethnicity and religious persuasions. President Buhari has consistently chosen Christians as running mates in the contest for civilian presidency. In fact, on the last two occasions, he chose Tunde Bakare and Professor Yemi Osinbajo, who, in addition to their other qualifications, are renowned pastors in their respective churches. A not well-known attribute of President Muhammadu Buhari is also that he has great sense of humor, even if the jokes are on him, and he loves cartoons that make fun of him. I cannot resist one personal example. In January 1984, General Vernon Walters was sent to Nigeria as special envoy of President Reagan to deliver a very tough message to the new military government under President Buhari. Actually, at that time, we had closed the border with Chad, and President Reagan wanted that border open. So General Walters began his remark to soften the ground. He said, Head of State General Buhari, I love your country. And for the first time, I visited your country for the first time in 1942, when I was a military assistant to a senior American general stationed in Europe. President General Buhari then responded that, well, until General Walters spoke, he did not realize that he, General Buhari, shared more than one thing in common with General Walters. First, that they are both generals, and second, that they both visited Nigeria for the first time in 1942. And then he looked at me, his foreign minister, and said, and my foreign minister had not even visited by that time. Now to the big questions. Has President Buhari succeeded in addressing the various challenges identified in this book? The author was right in pointing out that a major challenge was the expectation of a population that has voted for change, and that bringing about change, especially swift change, was not going to be easy. It is also too early, in my view, to come to a definitive conclusion. Hence, General Danjuma was right in his foreword by observing that this book would need to be updated at the end of the Buhari presidency. Yet, this book provides a useful progress report of the totality of efforts being made in meeting the multidimensional challenges facing the country. I come from Ilorin in Kwara State, and the people used to say, and I believe it's also a Hausa proverb, that a Friday, since Ilorin is mostly Muslim, 90% Muslim, he said Friday is the day of Juma. He said the Friday that is going to be good and pleasant, you will see the signs from Thursday. So the signs that we are seeing now shows that the prospect of President Buhari's administration really addressing successfully these challenges are enormous. As we speak, Boko Haram military capabilities have been degraded. It's a fact. The fight against corruption is being relentlessly waged. The effort to diversify the economy are on course, and the commitment to change is credible. However, it is fair to say that the expectation of the people of Nigeria for swift change could have been better managed by this administration, especially given what Payden described as, quote, Buhari's popularity at the grassroots level, especially in the north, has increased to almost messianic proportion. In my view, it is not true that upon coming to power, the APC government under Buhari did not know what policies to pursue. That's not true. The party's manifesto is there, and President Buhari's inaugural address was clear in terms of what his policy priorities would be. Rather, what I think is that the APC government led by President Buhari did not fully internalize the gravity of the situation which they were inheriting from the previous administration. These are now too well known to repeat here. This leads to the related question posed by Payden. Do individuals' leaders shape history, or does history shape individuals? According to Payden, the answer is that in the case of Buhari, both are true. Nonetheless, increased success in meeting the challenges facing Nigeria, or indeed any nation, and lasting change cannot be achieved by one person alone, however hugely and deeply committed he may be, as President Buhari certainly is. In Nigeria's case, I have to ask, where are the flag bearers for change in the APC in the states? The APC chairman is with us here. I suggest, with respect, that there should be new flags given to APC governors to begin to champion change physically, the way in which Buhari does at the federal level. So you've given them flags to contest. You have given them flag under which they want. Now give them new flags to say they must emulate exactly the fight against corruption and the commitment to change of Buhari at the state level. Also, I think we will have to involve Nigerians, the NGOs, civil society, non-state actors in the change mantra. Indeed, we also need to have a national conversation on how to reduce the huge and growing costs of governance at the local, state, and federal level. In writing this book, John Payden was upfront in stating that unlike standard academic books, there will be no footnotes. Well, some of us who have been long-term academics will have liked footnotes, but he said he wasn't going to do so, and he didn't. However, the section dealing with the personality of President Buhari could have been enriched by interviews with those more people who have more direct and close relationship with him. Other than Malam Mamandara himself, and Mahmoud Tukru, and my humble self, I think he could have talked to some other people, such as Musa Bello, Abidu Yazid, Professor Tam David West, Senator Mama Magoro, Asiwaju Tinubu himself, and President Obasanjo, who is here to mention a few. Another huge omission in the book is a discussion of Buhari's foreign policy then and now. Is the present administration operationalizing the concentric circle concept of foreign policy under his earlier military government? In fact, if not in theory, because if you look at the presence of the presidents of the neighboring countries, that seems to be a fact that he puts on Nigeria first, his security and welfare, and next, relationship with our neighboring country, ECOWAS, Africa, and the rest of the world. Yeah, people have been very stingy with applause. You can go ahead and... Now, also, in order to build upon President Buhari's hugely successful foreign travels and meetings with foreign leaders, there's the need to articulate the organizing principles of the administration foreign policy and the priorities in this regard. Are the structures and personnel in place fully to take advantage and consolidate the gains he has been making himself through his personal diplomacy? And let me say, putting on my hat as a professor of international relations 101, the articulation of a coherent foreign policy is not dogon turenchi, and it's not a luxury. Rather, it's an external projection of our values as a people, promotion of our national interests and our worldview. What are the strategies being waged to win friends, to influence actions of other foreign nations in the international community and establish appropriate status within it? What leadership role should we be playing in ECOWAS, African Union, and the United Nations, and how do we go about ensuring this? Mr. Chairman, I'm going to conclude. And I want to conclude by saying a few words concerning what has been identified by the author as the Nigerian Project, which is a quest for a prosperous and unified state of Nigeria in the context of the change mantra of the Buhari administration. It needs to be restated again and again that the sustainability of an agenda of change cannot depend on one person and must involve a collective endeavor to open a new chapter in our national life, which will represent a clean break with the past and the opening of a new gateway into the future. President Buhari is leading for the Nigerian people, the ordinary people, and we must support him so that we can take our country back from the enemies of the Nigerian state, that is, the looters and destroyers of our national resources. Thank you. And take our country back, let's get it back, from what I call professional defenders of ethnic interests. In other words, we're not talking about professionals who happen to be northerners, but we have some professional northerners who think they are more northern than anybody else. We have professional Igbos, professional Yorubas, who think, professional minorities, who emphasize all the things that divide us instead of things that unite us. So So to this end, a wholesale attitudinal change, by whatever name that is called, combined with a new code of leadership and followership, need to be embraced across different segments of society and institutions of governance. Also, a diversified economy with priority for job creation for our youth is of critical. Believe me, any country that is playing with large-scale unemployment of the youth is really asking for trouble. And we have seen it globally, but particularly in our country. A new compact would need to be established between rulers and citizens that will serve as a basis for our collective audit of the performance of those whom we entrusted our national destiny. Finally, Mr. Chairman, there is no doubt that where citizens are able to establish a link between democratic governance and improvement in their living conditions, they are able to renew their faith in the inclusivity and representativeness of that system of government. Let me give another anecdote. Perez de Cuellar, who was then Secretary General of the United Nations, came to visit General Buhari then in 1984, and the head of state asked him, "You are a very experienced global citizen. What advice would you like to give us? We are a new government." This was in 1984. And Perez de Cuellar said, "Well, what I'm about to say, don't take it too wrongly. I'm from a developing country, Peru. And people used to say of Peru that Peru is a potentially rich and powerful nation. But I've been saying that for the last 300 years. Don't let it be said of Nigeria that it's a potentially rich and powerful nation, and for people to continue to say it for the next 100 years. Where citizens feel that they are included and come to understand that their voices count on everyday basis, not just around democratic elections, standards of governance are improved, and the political culture benefits through improvements that ensure in the conduct of politicians. Inclusivity also contributes to the process of nation building, which remains unfinished part of national agenda. I have been privileged to serve as special envoy to many conflict areas. My formula is very simple. You can either practice the politics of exclusion, I have no peace, or you practice the politics of inclusion, and your prospect for peace is guaranteed. So those who glorify or benefit from including others, be warned. You are sowing the seeds of problem in our country. So we have to find the will. We have to find the will to call a stop to all the factors that have hampered our progress to date. And that is why we must thank Professor Pedin for writing this biography and showing us a leader, telling us more about him, whose entire public life is dedicated to the proposition that we Nigerians can do it, and we must do it. And now is the time to do so, because to borrow the American expression, if not now, when? And if not us, who? I thank you very much for listening.